any more issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was gonna do this on my computer, but for some reason it's acting dumber than me. So we're gonna have to pivot and use my cell phone. We'll see how well that holds up. Other than that, Jake, well, thank you so much for putting up with all my changes and
Oh,
finally getting this sorted out so that
I
we were
made a
able to.
few of my own. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I was in county. Usually, I'll try to. I usually I'll ask my wife what her work schedule is like, and I'll plan these around her work days because I know when she's off, she usually wants me to do stuff with her.
Yeah.
And she wasn't supposed to work today, but she ended up trading the shift with one of her coworkers, and is like, "Oh, can you go with me to Mexicali?" And I was like, "Wow, this is kind of last minute." And I said, "I don't know. Let me talk to Jake, see if what his schedule's like, because I'm not going to be playing around with people's schedules." And luckily, fortunately enough, you were kind enough to allow me to reschedule for later today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I had the whole day off, so it was a little more flexible. But my rescheduling was a much worse story. So I had no power for 5 days and no internet for a week. So it was a nightmare. You're lucky you live in a warm place because ice storms are no fun. It was
Yeah, no, down here we don't get very much storms. We're supposed to get some snow. Um, what is it on next week, next Thursday or something like that? But who knows? That stuff is not very predictable out here.
yeah, I imagine not, but we're still cleaning up. We got trees and limbs down everywhere. It's a mess. But I don't know. I live in southwestern in Virginia, southeast Virginia, southwest Virginia. Sorry, I don't know where
Oh,
I live.
okay.
So we're kind of up in the mountains, and we don't have a ton of huge natural disasters, but every once in a while we get some weird storms. Lately, this is a bad winter, but which is not fun when you're a fish keeper and you got a whole bunch of tanks to take care of. So
I don't know why I thought you were in PA. For some reason, I could have sworn you were in PA, but obviously not.
no, I have a brother in PA. Actually, I found out that he lives about 5 minutes away from Keystone, where Keystone clashes. So I think I might have to pay him a visit in September. So,
Ah, is that something you plan on going?
well, now that I found out it is right there, I think so because I can go and if I want to buy something, I'll just stash at his house before I leave. I don't know. I don't. He's not a fish keeper, but he might become one. So
How far of a drive is it from Virginia to the
uh,
Keystone?
it's about 6 hours. Takes me
Oh,
about six
okay.
hours to get up
That's
there.
an
Yeah,
easy drive.
yeah, that's not bad. Probably about 2 days for you, but and you got to cross that Texas state. So
Well, yeah, that's a whole day. I mean, I don't think no, I haven't been able to do it all in one shot because I have my grandkids that live in Houston, so that's on the total opposite
oh
side of
wow,
the state. And I've only managed to do it in one day, and we've had to stop in San Antonio. And
oh yeah.
now my son lives in San Antonio, but his kids are in Houston. So now I just make the drive all the way to San Antonio, which still it's got to be I don't know about a 18-20 hour drive because you
Yeah.
gotta include the stops in between for food and
Oh
you gotta
yeah.
get out and stretch out your legs for a little bit.
I've only done that drive once, and I did it all at once, and I had everything I owned with me, and I destroyed my car doing it. That was a college move, where you just shove everything into the tiniest car you own, and the wheel wells were about that far above the wheel, and we drove across Texas. So I used to live in just north of Houston, actually, a little town called Lufkin. No
Okay.
one's ever no one's ever heard of it, but lived there for a little while. My wife's from that area, so.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, yeah. So
Now,
uh,
no, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna start getting into a little bit about yourself. I was gonna have you kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing with your channel and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, so it's been about a 5 month journey with this so far. My wife's been telling me for years that I should film stuff. I kind of collect hobbies. I get into stuff, and when I do it, I kind of go big into it. So I'm not a lifelong fish keeper. There were moments growing up, as a kid, I was went to SeaWorld and saw the Shamu show, which I don't think they do anymore. But and afterwards, I was obsessed with fish and wanted to be a marine biologist. But I never got to actually get any fish. I remember we actually went to a pet store, and I thought I was going to get some fish, and we walked away with a cat. So I had a cat, but I didn't get the fish. But I remember as a kid being in a fish store, staring at the fish and wanting the fish, but I guess the cat was easier, so we got a cat. But and then I have an uncle that's a big fish keeper, and growing up I'd go to his house, but he lived a long ways away at the time. But I remember him having fish and things like that. So it was always something that was kind of there. I was always interested in it. We did, I think, about 10 years ago. Well, it's been about 12 years now. When we moved to Virginia, my daughter was. Yeah, she was my oldest. So your first child, you do a lot of things with them that you don't realize they don't care because they're babies. Yeah. But you want to be a parent and you want to do fun things. So I remember when she was like 6 months old, we bought her a beta fish, and I had no idea what I was doing. I think we killed like 2 of them, but it was anyway. So that didn't last long. So yeah. So fast forward a few more years, and it's kind of 2 stories to it, because my daughter had a beta fish and got some guppies, and every father hates to see their kids cry. And of course we killed things, and I hated it. So I started doing research on fish and to try to not kill the next one, and eventually finally figured out what the nitrogen cycle was and got it right. But we just had this little 5-gallon tank, and I was for about 6 months, I just kept staring at this little tank thinking, I got to get a bigger tank. And then I was like, if I get a bigger tank, I'm going to get 100 tanks. So don't go get a bigger tank. And don't go. And I held off for about 6 months, but I kept dropping fish in her little 5-gallon tank, kind of taking it over. And then eventually I actually, so that's the second story, is I was not going to do it. And then what happened was I actually had some heart problems, and I had to have a procedure done. And I couldn't do many of my other things for a while, but I could do fish keeping. So kind of while I was not doing other things, I remember I brought home my first 4-foot, 55-gallon tank. And I just thought that thing was massive. I was like, man, this thing is huge. Like, what can I do with this? And then I realized it wasn't that big. And so I just started collecting things. And actually the channel name, FWish List, was, as I started buying more fish and researching fish, there were too many that I wanted. And I had a little, note pad on my phone. And I think at first I called it Wish List, but I lost track of it on my phone. So I changed it to FWish List, and it's still on my phone. It's a very long list of fish. And so whenever I made the channel, I was like, yeah, I think that's going to be it, even though it's impossible to say for some people, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I sometimes get tongue tied I know it's not, it's like Wish, but it's got an F. So it's like trying to figure it out. The other day I was struggling to mention that you were going to be on, and it's like, even you said it. Oh, I'm so sorry that it's so hard to pronounce. It's just, you got to get used to it. It's not something you're normally pronouncing.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, and this is probably like the 3rd iteration of my basement stuff. And every time I changed it, my wife just kept telling me, like, you got to make some videos and just share this. I mean, so, I feel like there's different reasons to make channels. You can be the expert, and I wasn't the expert. I mean, I'm still learning. There's plenty to learn and things like that. But there weren't very many people that would come over and see it. They're just not a lot of people come into my basement. Although I will say that is the weirdest thing about this hobby. It's the only thing I've ever done where a complete stranger on the internet can send you a message and say, you want to come over and get some fish? They're all in my basement. And you just go over there and go into some random person's house, and they take you downstairs. It's totally normal. You don't even think twice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've done that about 4 times. I'm like, any other day, this would be a little, not a smart thing to do. But for some reason in fish keeping, yeah, come on over to my basement. But anyways, I had like 2 or 3 people come over, and they thought it was amazing, and I was like, yeah, I might as well start sharing it. So started making some videos, and yeah, it's been fun. So
Yeah, because I know when I started watching your channel, it was you were talking about building your fish room, but it seemed like you already had quite a substantial amount of aquariums. I mean,
yeah,
how many did you have already up and running before you decided to start the channel?
I had technically more than I have now. I've actually dropped down a little bit. I think my highest number I got to was about 37.
Okay.
Back down to about 33, just because I've been just consolidating some stuff, and I guess it's funny. I feel like that number. How many tanks do you have? And it's kind of a I don't want to call it clickbait, or it's a catchy thing to say on YouTube. 100 tanks, 500 tanks, and sometimes they're just a box full of dirt and a nasty sponge filter. Like, does that really count? So I kind of started saying, well, this isn't really a tank. This is just a dirty box. So let's actually start making this look better. And so I kind of went back and some of it was breeding too. I've been trying to breed some stuff. I don't want to breed 100 things, but I kind of want to breed. I've got a local store that'll buy a few things from me. So I'm just trying to figure out what they want, and mostly just to get some free stuff. I don't plan to make any money from it, but actually my saltwater tank right there is almost completely paid for by baby bristlenose plecos. So, so that was nice. Yeah, so I have kind of dropped down on the number just a little bit, but trying to make them more enjoyable and something I want to look at, so.
Yeah, because one of the things that I find interesting, and you kind of touched on it from when you're talking about your list of fish. It's not like you look at your fish room and you can say, oh, he does X fish or this kind of species. It's a little bit of everything. It's almost like a miniature pet store, because you have some cichlids, you have some nanofish, live bears. It really is a nice combination of the different species of fish. Is that an accurate interpretation, or is it just because of the videos that I've seen?
No, that's pretty accurate. I mean, even on the last one, I was talking about going and making some full nano. Last or 2 videos ago, I was talking about making some full-on nano tanks and getting some CPDs. And I even last summer I started into the pond thing, which actually did not go well because our winter has been not great, and because I was going to build a pond, but we had I have bears around me. We actually have our bear has a name. His name is Larry. He gets into trash. We see him sometimes, and it's a black bear. It's an Appalachian mountain, so it's kind of a weird thing. But I'm kind of used to bears. I've had quite a few encounters with bears, but anyway, they're not as scary as they probably are. Scarier than I should probably treat them a little more respect. But anyway, so I was going to build a pond, but one night I hear some noise out, and I look outside, shine a flashlight light in there, and Larry the bear is taking a bath and munching on a goldfish. And I never saw those koi again. Anyway, so yeah, that was the end of the pond. I don't think I'm going to be doing the ponds anymore. But
yeah, no, you'll have all the bears in the neighborhood there.
yeah. But I mean, I do. Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. I haven't seen many fish that I don't like. So, I mean, I've thought before, like, could I narrow this down? I really like Tanganyikans. I'd have to say I'm like maybe a little overrepresented on Tanganyikans, but that wouldn't cover it as well. Yeah, there's a lot of rainbows. Oh man, I want some more rainbows. I love rainbows, but yeah, they're also interesting. The only thing that's bad about it, especially this applies to a lot of things in my life, just because I end up collecting other hobbies, is it's like mediocrity in all things. Like if I were to just focus on Tanganyikans, I could probably get really good at Tanganyikans, but instead I it kind of dilutes itself after a while. But I mean, I keep up with it, but lost your video there.
No, I turned off the camera because I'm trying to do something in YouTube Studio.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was still working.
Yeah, no, I'm here. It's just I don't know why now the computer seems to be working fine. I don't know why it was acting. I hadn't used it since my last live stream, so that's probably one of the reasons why it was acting so. It hadn't completely woken up yet.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure there was the right setting on there. Let me try this to see if I can get back on the computer. Nah, you know what? We already started on the phone. I'll stay on the phone.
It sounds pretty good, actually.
Oh, okay.
Did my image freeze? I can't see me.
Yeah, that was the problem I was having on the computer. For some reason, your image kept freezing, and I could, it would sound like it had a massive delay. But when I turned it on right now, it was asking for an update. So I'm thinking that was just part of the issue because it'd been off for so long, and it needed to be updated. But yeah, you're frozen. I don't know if I lost you or what happened.
No, I'm still here. Let me just turn it off and turn it back on. You must have Windows, Microsoft.
Yeah, I do, but I'm on the phone. I'm not on the computer.
No.
As a matter of fact, let me shut down the computer. I don't think that's the issue, but just in case.
Oh, it's back.
There it is.
There you go. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tanganikans is basically what you have the most of right now.
Probably if you take the whole place, probably not. But I mean,
Okay.
I guess gallonage, they have a 210 gallon tank. When I got my 210, I remember I spent a long time thinking about what I was going to put in it. And I just wanted something totally different. You see a lot of people get a big tank and, well, what are we going to do? We're going to throw an arowana in there. We're going to throw 5 Oscars. And it's not that I didn't like those setups, but it was maybe everybody does that. So I wanted to do something different. And so I decided to go that route because I honestly, there weren't very many people out there that I could see doing it. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't just do it just to be unique, but there were fish that I really enjoyed. And I find that when you give fish a large tank that most people don't give them, you get a behavior that most people don't see. And which is what I've noticed with some of the fish. People will be like, wow, that's like my daffodils is a good example. They're in my 210. Everybody talks about how their daffodils kill every fish in sight. Mine don't do that. And it's probably because they have plenty of space to move around. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't think that those people are wrong. They might be that aggressive, but maybe that's in a 4-foot tank. So kind of interesting. But yeah, they have the most gallons. I mean, they have 2 6-foot tanks. So I guess I have 4 tank, 4.5. One of them's kind of a mix of, that one's not really a display tank. It's kind of catching a bunch of fish right now. So I got about 4 display tanks of Tanganikans. So,
and one of the things that I noticed in your Tanganikans, it's not the run-of-the-mill Tanganiki. You have some more of the rare Tanganikans in there, right?
Yeah. I turn it so they're in the film. Yeah, there's a few weird ones in there. The foyer, which I kind of want to move out of this tank a little bit. The Cyathopharynx foyer, they're really crazy cool looking when they're fired up. Otherwise, they just look like a silver fish. But and the other thing about them, all Tanganikans, anybody who's kept Tanganikans, they just take forever. I mean, these guys, I've had some of these guys for 2 years, and I'm just finally, oh, look, there's a little bit of color now. That looks a little bit more like the picture that I saw when I bought it 2 years ago. But, it just takes so long for them to show you what they've got. And some of them, I swear they've never grown. Wow, something just fell behind me. But anyway, so yeah, there's some kind of rare ones in there. So pretty neat. But
the only ones I have are the Maltese, and it was interesting because they were supposed to be a breeding colony, and I thought, all right, I'm going to get them, and immediately they're going to start producing for me. It took them about 6 months to get used to their new environment because they were so timid. Now they come out. They recognize me, and I walk by there, and they think I'm going to feed them. But it's amazing how long it takes them. And I don't know if it's just that species in itself, or Tanganyikan fish, because I've never had that issue with any other fish. But I did notice that with those and it wasn't just me, because I sold them to a friend of mine here in town, and she kept calling me every day and saying, "Hey, they're not coming out of the shells. You think they're dead?" And I said, "You know what? Give it some time." I know it took them about 6 months before I would see them in the tank, because most of the times they were hiding in the shells, and it was really that long. And for a while there, she thought I was lying, but now that they've settled in, she's probably had them for about 8 months, and she's getting overrun with little babies. And I told her, once they get going and they get comfortable, they just start pumping out babies like crazy.
Yeah, actually, mine did the exact same thing. Those are the first Tanganyikans I ever got. What's interesting, so my water, I'm on a well, so I have never bought water conditioner. I've never kind of excited about that. Not many people can say that, but I don't have to dechlorinate. The water comes out of the ground, and I have awesome water, but it's super soft. I mean, out of the tap, it's like pH 6.5, TDS is about 50. So it's pretty soft and kind of acidic. But I was kind of nervous for a long time about buying anything African. I had a lot of South Americans, but just because I was worried that they wouldn't be able to live in my water. But I've since then I use substrates and just to buffer the water. My first substrate I just dumped oyster shells in there. I have chickens, so I stole my wife's chickens' oyster shells and dumped them in the sand, and that did the trick. That was with the multis for the longest time. But I had the same experience. I mean, mine, they would not come out for a long time. Couldn't get close to the tank. But once they started breeding and filling up the tank, even now, like now they have so much competition in there. So I think they're a little bit more used to me being the bringer of food. So they come up. But when I only had 9 to begin with. Yeah, I didn't see them. I didn't see them either. So, but I don't see that applies to other Tanganyikans. All my other ones are pretty active. They're not like, well, the tank right here, they all come to the corner when they see me walk by. So they are pretty similar, but they're not quite as much as like the South American puppy dogs, the Oscars and some of my other bigger fish. They don't quite greet me the same way. So, but the multis definitely.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you with the big tank, small fish. And I remember the first time, the one that just stood out in my mind when I saw it, and I was like, I hope that one day I can do that, was Corvus. I think he had like a 280-gallon planted aquarium. That sucker was huge. I think it was like 8 foot long or something like that.
That's awesome.
And it was amazing because it was completely planted with small, just nanofish in there. And I remember looking at that and going, "This looks amazing." It was just and ever since then I've been kind of infatuated with that and wanting to kind of replicate that. But then you quickly find out.
240-gallon planted tank. Which nanofish would you throw in there?
Oh, I'd love to do like a big colony of either neon tetras or chili rasboras.
Oh man, that would be awesome. That'd be so
But you start getting into that, yeah, you're almost talking like $1,000 worth of fish just to be able to tell there's fish in the tank that big.
It's probably more than that, because I have my Blackwater aquarium that at the time when I was setting it up, I was like, what would be so cool? And I had the same thought. It's like, I should do a bunch of little fish, and I want to do a school. I wanted to watch them school back and forth. So I bought 50 of them, which is not cheap. It's like spending this much money on a fish this big. But I bought 50 of them. I put them in there and sit down. I'm like, it doesn't look like 50. I mean, I thought it would be this massive school. It's like this little back and forth. I'm like, I got to have like 500 before I get noticed that it's a lot of fish. So if you had a big 8-foot tank, oh my gosh, you'd probably spend 10 grand in tetras.
Yeah, cause I remember, I guess Corey from Aquarium Co-op had but 1,000 rummy nose. And I think he had put them in an 800-gallon aquarium. I forgot how big that aquarium was. But
that was with his puffer, right?
No, this is before he put him in with the puffer when he was quarantining him, because he ended up losing a lot of them, and I think he only ended up with like half of that whole entire purchase that he did. But it was like 1,000 of them, and then it still didn't look like a lot of fish.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, it was the most I've seen in an aquarium, but in the scope of things, because I remember how big those aquariums were, it still didn't seem like what you would think in your mind, you know, like 500 fish would probably, you know, you think 500 fish, and immediately you think, or at least I do, it takes me back to those images of the ocean where the fish swim in a big school to protect themselves, and you see this big old ball. That's what I thought, like that many fish should look in an aquarium.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all scattered everywhere. That it just, you know, it's just amazing how many fish it really takes to be able to get an effect like that. But right now I have a 4-footer. It's a 120. And I think I found the perfect size fish for the look that I'm looking for. And I think it's going to be the swordtails, because they're bigger than a nanofish, but smaller than most cichlids. So it's like that perfect medium where I have about 20 of them in there, which I know they're going to be more. And it looks sparse, but I know with time it's going to fill in nice. And I think it's going to be the right size fish to get that effect that I'm looking for.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Yeah, I just got some for the first time. You said that there are a lot of rare fish, and I've actually never owned all the common ones. I just got some mollies the other day for the first time, and I was like, well, how is it taking me this long to get mollies? But I actually think they're pretty awesome. And maybe that's the next step. I don't have very many live bears. I had some guppies. I bought, I think, a couple pairs from Dan's Fish, and they bred, and what they did what guppies do. And I have a tank of them, and actually I had a ton of them at one point, but I never figured out what to do with it. And I've got a friend who he loves his daughter loves the guppies, and he's going to take them because I don't know what to do with them. And I don't know. I guess I just never been into the live bear thing, but yeah, those mollies might do it for me. They're pretty awesome. And the swordtails, they look pretty cool too. So pineapple,
yeah,
I like those.
They're a little bit bigger body, and now that they've started line breeding them for different features on them, they're actually more appealing now. I really like the Sanke ones, the ones that look like koi, and those are really neat. Oh, yeah. But I was having this conversation with some of my friends that I don't know what it is. I think it's just now that I've been doing this for a little bit longer, you start acquiring an appreciation for the wild type colors. You know, the more not so flashy, you know, you start picking up, like I'm looking right now at some sailfin mollies that I have that are wild caught. And most people would probably look at that fish and go, oh, it's just a silver fish with a little bit of yellow and blue. But I think that's really cool because it's the original stuff, and you don't see that anymore. You either see them, they're all solid black, or they're all solid white, or they're orange, or, you know, there's all this, but you don't hardly see the wild type. And I thought, you know what, these are pretty cool. And I've separated 2 colonies that I've got going, and it came to a point now where I've got some friends that want some, and I think I'm going to be able to start sending them some of these fish. So, but yeah, it's just and it's funny because it's not with wild types. You don't always get those colors. But when they do fire up, because they feel like it's time to breed, it's well worth having them because it's something you're not going to see.
Yeah, you did the work to get it. You've earned it.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about the line breeding. Does that mess up their genetics? How does that?
It's selective breeding. If you see a trait that you like on a certain fish, like a lot of these long fins, it started out with a fish that had longer fins than the other, and somebody says, oh, this is really cool. Let me try to see if I can continue to breed this out of fish. So you'll take whatever trait you like, cross it with another, you know, species from, you know, another fish with a female from the same species. And then as they produce babies, you start selecting the ones that have the traits that you like, whether it's colors, whether it's finnage, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And it would like guppies. That's how you've gotten so many colorations, and then after so many generations, you got to avoid deformities. You got to learn how to back breed them back to the original line, and so it takes quite a bit of work and knowledge to be able to correctly do it, and dedication. I don't have the dedication necessarily to do that, to do select. I try doing it with some of the guppies, but unless you're on top of it and separating all the males and the females and keeping track of the generations and making sure you understand when you backbreed them how to backbreed, because I think it's something about you can't breed the males with the original mom, because then you'll have some deformities. It's got to be the dad with. It's weird. I know there's certain guidelines you need to follow to have better success, and but by that time it's the problem for me was I'm a hoarder. I like all these different fish. So if I was going to try to line breed, I could have basically a colony that I want, and I would probably have to have at least 6 tanks that I could dedicate to them, so that I could start separating, males, females, and then have some that you can backbreed and do all the selective breeding stuff like that. And so that's why now that I've tried it, I understand the pricing on some of these fish, because it's all that back work that goes into it. And the problem is, once you straighten out a line with the traits you want, the people that buy them from you are not going to have the same issues that you had to breed them.
So you
they'll be able to produce a lot more. And then that's why you'll see, like with all fish, you'll see a spike in the price. And then once, they'll be there for a little bit. And as they become popular and more people have them, boom, they start dropping, because all of a sudden everybody has figured it out. They're not having to do all this work to get them there. So that's why I understand when new lines come out, the pricing, because you're only going to be able to get that much money for them for a short amount of time for all the work. Because sometimes it takes 2 to 3 years to straighten out. And this is only with guppies. That's the only thing that I'm aware of. I don't know if it's the same thing with some of the other species. I don't know if cichlids are a little bit easier to do that with, just because they produce so much. I don't know. And so, but only with live bears, I'm a little bit more familiar, because I was trying to do it for a while. But yeah, you almost have to dedicate an entire fish room to just try to breed a genetic line. And then you have a lot of fish that you got to be able to do something with them, because you're not going to continue to reproduce those. So, maybe out of a
lot of friends,
out of a whole batch of them, you might be able to get 10 out of there that you'll be able to continue to carry on that line. So, but yeah, it's work.
It sounds like you're making me tired just thinking about it, but it sounds like, and I would probably do the same thing, because I have a hard time getting rid of fish. I see people locally all the time. They put, anybody want to come get this? And I just think, well, I'll just get another tank. So, but then I have other problems.
That's when it's good to have like a local store. But then you're just kind of turning them in as fancy guppies. You're not really selling anything. And a lot of the times, whether you know it or not, they become feeder fish for other fish.
Right. Yeah. But no, I wanted to, going back to what you said earlier about the wild fish. I completely agree. It's like we breed all these pretty colors into the fish, but I mean, I see a wild type and I just think that looks amazing. And I kind of go back and forth. So this is the debate I was having with a friend this week. Was I like the wild stuff, but sometimes I see something like I actually have some longfin zebra danios. They're actually glowfish that I want to put in my pond. And I, for the longest time, I was like, I'll never buy this. But I was like, that looks so amazing. I got to have it. So I kind of go back and forth. I love the wild type, but occasionally I'll see something that's totally unnatural and be like, nah, give me that too. So.
Yeah, no, I have them all. I mean, I have a combination of some wild types and some of the, because they're still really cool fish that have these color morphs, and you go, oh, that's so awesome. And you want to have them. I mean, I still do that. And but yeah, no, it's you. I guess because especially when we do this, you're so used to seeing the most colorful, the the most vibrant ones out there that when you come across, like for example with discus, I love the real Nene because they're like yellow, green, and a little bit of red speckling on them, and I think those really look as good as some of the other different color morphs that are out there. But
Oh,
if
I
I did
agree.
a tank, if I did a tank with discus, I think I would do that type. It's just I really like the way those look, and they're just naturally like that. They haven't been selectively bred to demonstrate those colors. So once in a while you get some wild stuff that just rivals anything that's been line bred. So
Yeah. I think I'd love to have the wild discus too, but I'm just afraid of killing them.
yeah, I tried discus for a while, and I'm not ready to have discus. I'm not ready to do the daily water changes, and I don't have the time. Maybe once I get retired and all I'm doing is hanging out in the fish room,
Yeah.
I might do that. But my one
Well,
experience with them was not very good.
so I'm actually, you see my discus tank right there? The water, it's on a Wi-Fi timer. It's doing a water change right now, and I'm not even doing anything. So I'm kind of lazy too, but in a different way. So I don't know.
Well,
It's working out.
yeah, for me, it's that I don't have a set work schedule. We work 3 shifts.
Oh yeah.
So when I work graveyards, it's like a wasted day because I come home, I'll try to sleep for a little bit, I'll wake up, I have a couple hours that I can run around, do stuff, and then I'll try to sleep before going to work again. So those days are pretty much shot. I don't have a whole lot of time. And then uh, when I work the swings, well, I can dedicate the morning. That's usually when I'll go around and do stuff around here in the fish room. But I've I've come to the realization that for the style of fish keeping I do, they're probably not for me right now. I would have to because I'm not doing constant water change. I'm not. I mean I do maybe every other week or every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And with those guys, and then the other thing, my biggest mistake was they were too small, and I put them in with angelfish, and they were getting out competed for food. So
Yeah.
even though I was feeding heavy, these guys were not eating well. So
Yeah.
that didn't help. It's almost like you've got to have a dedicated tank until they get to a certain size, and then maybe you can kind of put some other fish with them. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just for me it was not a good. I don't want to put another fish through that again. So
Right.
maybe down the road, once it's still something I want to do. Because it just looks cool. Yeah, I mean, you have a big tank
Yeah.
with these little dishes floating around in the water.
Oh yeah.
It looks neat. I
They do
think
look amazing.
for most of us, it becomes one of those bucket list fish. At some point, you want to have them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But even in the discus tanks, I've got 20 in there, and I had 3 of them. Actually, I'm kind of watching another one. They kind of outcompete themselves. There's just a few of them that are kind of looking. The other ones are growing great, but there were 3 of them that just kind of looked like they weren't eating as much and weren't growing. So actually, I just moved them into my 75 right below it, the dark water with all the rummy nose. I'm not sure if they're going to eat well down there. I just try to overfeed it and hopefully they'll get something. But I kind of debated. I was like, do I leave them in here and know they're not going to eat, or do I just try moving them? And I don't know. So we'll see if I can get those 3 to bulk back up. I mean, asking around about it, it seems like that's pretty normal, and that's what my experience with every fish I've kept is that if I have a group of them, there's always 1 or 2 that just get out competed. So I don't know, kind of a bummer, but hopefully
yeah,
maybe
there's,
they'll
there's
get
a
nice
couple of
fish.
people here in the chat that currently keep them and kept them, and they would be a pretty good resource for you if you have questions.
Yeah,
Like Joy of Fish Keeping. He's
yeah.
got multiple
Same.
tanks with discus, and so he would be a great resource.
Yeah, I've
It's just
actually watched a good bit of his stuff already.
oh, okay.
Maybe not in the comment section. I don't know if he knows, but yeah, I've watched this stuff. He's got some beautiful discus. I hope mine get that big and beautiful. So far, most of them are growing really well. So I kind of broke the rules. They say you should buy bigger fish to start with, and I wanted more of them, so I bought the small ones. So yeah, I guess you're not supposed to do that, but I did it. But it's working out really well, and like you said, the daily water changes and stuff, and I know there's lots of people that keep them different ways, but I wasn't keeping them for the same reason. And I actually had a night where I couldn't sleep, which happens sometimes, not because of the switching schedules like yours. I don't know how you do that. I did that for about 2 years, and I can never go back. That's a nightmare. But I couldn't sleep, and so I came downstairs and I was looking at my water manifold, and I just had this idea. I was like, wait, I can build this automatic system and I can have it do it on itself with Wi-Fi timers. So I came up with that, and so far it's working great. I mean, every day it just drains the tank and fills it back up again. So not drains it completely. It does about a 30% water change, which is pretty cool. So, but yeah, it takes forever to refill though. You can't hear the water, can you?
No, not really.
Okay.
It's just very far in the distance. Now, are your tanks drilled, or are you using those the over the back kind of like siphons that they make to do your water changes?
Actually, it's a PVC that comes in from the top of the tank.
Okay.
There's an inline pump in my laundry room, and I ran the PVC through the ceiling over to the inline pump, and the inline pump is hooked up to a Wi-Fi timer it's got a automatic ball valve, which was because I ran into some problems. I thought with it being about 30 feet away, I wouldn't have any problems with the siphon effect, but it ended up having that problem. So I had to put an automatic ball valve. So whenever the electricity turns on to the inline pump, it opens the ball valve and sucks it out. So I didn't have to drill anything. I just hooked it up to, and actually this, since I don't know if anybody's been watching it drain, it takes about 8 minutes to suck about 30% of the water out of the tank. So when I got this inline pump, I realized this thing is powerful, and I actually redid it so that I can now use it for all of my water changes throughout the entire fish room. And I can change like 3 or 4 large tanks in 20-30 minutes. And actually I have 2 hoses, so I can like stick one in sucking and the other one in filling, and it like goes throughout. So I've got 4 kids and a job, and same thing. I'm so busy. So as I've kind of moved along, every step I want to expand, I have to think of a way. Well, I can't take 4 hours with this. So, can I find a way to drop water changes, which I don't change them all every week. I just do a test strip. Like I check them each week just to see if they need anything. I don't do any like absolute no water change tanks, except for maybe my red cherry shrimp tank almost never gets changed. But I just do like a snapshot of each tank and then change the water based on that. But I usually only have to change about 3 or 4 weeks. So kind of makes it so that, especially with that pump, now I've got my water changes every week under 45 minutes. So it's kind of nice. But pretty cool system. It's helped a lot. So.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you was, because I've been watching. I think you even made a reference to it. But what's your connection to Brazil? Because I see you wear the soccer shirts, and I know you made a comment something about it. But were you living down there for a while?
I did. I was there. I lived there. I was a missionary there actually.
Oh, okay.
So I lived there for a while. And love the people. That was one of the things early on when I got into this, which I kind of want to buy some more wild caught fish just because I want to support that industry down there. And there's a lot of really good like freshwater exotics. That company, they have this, you can go on a trip with them and catch your own fish and things like that. I don't think I'll ever have time to do something like that, but I'd love to do that. I already got the language down, but so I lived there for a while and kind of love the fish that are from there. It kind of makes me feel a little bit connected to that part of the world. It's been a while since I've been there.
How many years did you live down there? Because obviously you picked up the language, so that's had to be more than a year.
Yeah, I was there for 2 years. So.
Oh, okay.
But
How difficult was it to speak Portuguese?
Well, when I got there, it was an immersion style of teaching. When I first got there, I went to Sao Paulo, and I just went out on the streets. They sent us out on the streets and said, "Go talk to people." And of course, we didn't know how to say anything to anybody, so it just kind of stumbled through stuff. And then for a while, I was living with Brazilians, and it was probably a good 6 months before I just felt comfortable talking. But I mean, it was
Wow,
an
that quick.
experience. Yeah,
That's
well, I
pretty
mean,
quick.
when it's all day, every day, and that's all you hear, I mean, you have to pick it up pretty quick. So,
What were some of
not
the
much
first
about
words that you started going, "Oh, I know what that is," and I think I know what he's saying?
it. Gosh, it's been like 18 years, so I don't know if I remember the exact moment where it just clicked. It was, yeah, I'm not sure what the first words were. That I mean, obviously the first things everybody learns is your introductions.
Mm.
Meu nome é, so stuff like just introducing yourself and things like that. But actually having a conversation, you learn how to ask how to go to the bathroom or where to go to the bathroom pretty quick. I mean, or I'm hungry. Can we go eat? Things like that. Those come pretty quick. But having conversations about it's kind of weird. I don't know how to talk about fish. I mean, I know what Pesces ornamentais is. I know what fish are called, like aquarium fish there. But I've had an idea before. I'm like, I should try to get in contact with somebody there and see if I could, get wild caught fish scent and then I can like treat them, stuff like that. And then I realized I wouldn't even know how to say that. Like, how do you even like, I wasn't there doing that. So, when you learn a language, you learn how to speak the things you're talking about. But then sometimes you realize, like, I don't know that whole area. That's like a whole language within a language. And I wouldn't even know where to start. But maybe one day I'll figure out the business of it and get in touch with somebody. And that would be kind of fun just to, support that. But we'll see. I don't know. That might be a retirement thing for me too, which is, it's not close enough. So one day.
Now, when you were down there at that time, did you already have an interest in fish, or that was
No.
that was one of those things where you wish nowadays, like, oh, I was down there in the mecca of it?
Yeah, I know. I've thought of that so many times. Like, man, I was right there. Well, I actually wasn't anywhere near. I was in the Northeast in an area called Recife, which is a little more desert. So, and there were rivers there. I mean, I'm assuming some of the fish that I keep were possibly in those rivers, but I didn't know anything about it. I actually had have a friend who was down there with me who told me, well, so he was living not far from me at the time, but he bought a bunch of bettas and actually got them to breed and sold them to a fish store down there. It was totally random. He just said one day saw that somebody asked him if he wanted to buy these. And he's like, sure, I'll take a fish. And he put them in his, and I didn't even know what he had at the time. I mean, we didn't live in much. I mean, or with much. So, but he actually bred betta fish while he was there. So no, yeah, they were around obviously, but I didn't get to stop to enjoy them, unfortunately. So,
and I know when you were down there, the hobby wasn't part of you yet. But do you recall like seeing a lot of were fish stores pretty common, or is it just one of those things that they might have been, but because you weren't interested in it, you just didn't pay attention and probably went unnoticed?
I don't think they were.
Okay.
I doubt they were big anywhere. I mean, they didn't have really the infrastructure to support it. I mean, where we lived, we only had water 2 or 3 days a week, and the electricity went out all the time. It would be a nightmare to keep fish there. I mean, I guess if you had a generator, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I didn't see it much. I don't remember seeing fish tanks in people's houses. That's probably why they had betta fish, is because they're labyrinth breathers. So if the power goes out, and plus it's warm there all the time, so they probably didn't even need a heater. I bet those kinds of fish are pretty popular, but I don't think their infrastructure would have supported a large aquarium hobby. I mean, coming off of a recent power outage, I can tell you that's pretty stressful. And when your power goes out twice a week, I don't think that would really work. So probably a lot of labyrinth fish, I would imagine, but I didn't see it hardly anywhere. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I do that I've noticed, well, now that I'm in the hobby and that I pay attention to stuff, is like when I go down to Mexico, I'm always looking out to see if I see a fish store and stuff like that. But then I realize that we take it for granted because we can afford to keep multiple fish tanks and all that water, like you were talking about. Down there, it's sort of a luxury, and I don't know if Brazil's what Brazil's economy is like, but you start going, wow, these guys should have all kinds of fish, but then you start realizing they're not in the hobby, not because they don't want to, probably because they just can't afford to be in the hobby. Unless you're breeding fish for profit, that's just an extra cost that they might not want to have to deal with. So
No,
that's what I was kind of wondering if you notice that, or but it's kind of hard to gauge it because you're not in, you weren't necessarily all in at the time. You kind of
right.
go like notice
Well,
on that thing.
in the south of Brazil, it's a little more. There's more infrastructure. They have more money in the south. That's probably the best way to say it. So the cities. I've never been more south than São Paulo, but when you get to Lombarina and Santa Catarina and just a little bit more south, my understanding from people I've talked to that live there is they say it's pretty much just like the United States. It's very a lot more clean, a lot more infrastructure. So maybe in those areas they do. And I guess down there you'd still have maybe the geophagus, the brasiliensis, or the tempura, the gymnogeophagus, things like that. So I'm sure they could possibly support it down there. But yeah, where I was, it was pretty poor, and yeah, they weren't a lot of people that were thinking about keeping fish. They were working a lot and doing what they had to survive. So wonderful people, but yeah, it does kind of show. That when you hear somebody that says they're miserable here, it's like, you even know what you have. But
Yeah, yeah. I always laugh at it because people complain about stuff here that they just take for granted that they have all these other resources available to them. You go into some of these countries, some outside of the United States, where there's a very delineated poverty. There's and you really start seeing some serious poverty, and you go, yeah, I got it good. I don't care how bad I think I have it; it's still better than what they
oh yeah,
are going through. So
yeah.
there's no
You know
reason
what
for me to
though?
complain.
They were so much happier than so many of us are. I have to say, I've thought that so many times. Just they were so happy with what they had. I saw people that literally lived on the street or lived in houses that wouldn't qualify for a shed here, and you wouldn't even know. You just talk to them on the street, and they're, how's it going? Oh man, today it is great. Today I'm gonna go to this person's house. They always used to. This was my favorite thing, is they used to just go to each other's houses, and they always had sitting areas in front of their houses, and you just see people sitting there, and they just talk for a couple hours, and then they'd go to somebody else's house, and that was what they did. They were alive, and they were happy, and they didn't care that they didn't have things. They were just, hey, you got some extra rice at your house, I got some extra whatever this, and I'll bring it over and put it together, and we'll have some food. And it was, yeah. But then when you hear people are so miserable, and I guess that's the lesson, is that it's not the stuff it's not the fish tanks that makes you happy. It's it's the connection, and that's kind of what I love about YouTube in general, about this kind of stuff, is it's connection, and that's what makes people happy in reality, not stuff. So
Yeah, and it's so interesting, that observation, because I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and one of the things that you notice is, yeah, the exact. It seems like it's the same thing. People in the afternoons, once the sun goes down, they congregate outside. It's totally the opposite of the United States, where everybody wants to go in the backyard and be isolated. In Mexico, everybody's out in the front of the house, and
yeah,
the entire neighborhood
yeah,
congregate, and they go. It's basically going from one group to another, talking, and it's there's some gossiping and stuff like that, but that's how they kind of find out how everybody else is doing, and who needs help, who's this, and it's like their support network is a little bit different.
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's something something we're definitely missing. And I struggle with how do I teach that to my kids. I mean, we do stuff in communities locally, but I guess I didn't do a very good job. I live in kind of a rural area, so maybe I should have lived in a subdivision and set up a tent on my front lawn if I really wanted to do that. But it is a value that I think is instilled and taught. But yeah, we're definitely missing out on that here.
But going back to what you were saying about being happy and with not having so much stuff, you know what I think it is, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine named Steve, Warrior Planet Takes, and we were talking about growing up when we were kids, because me and him come from very similar backgrounds. I mean, we were, but it was like everybody in that neighborhood was poor, so you didn't know the difference. You really didn't. Everybody was in the same situation. So it wasn't, there was like a total disconnection to what was outside of our immediate world. That's because social media didn't exist. So you didn't know that people had it better than you did. You just know everybody that you were with were in exactly the same situation you were in. So what was there to complain about? There wasn't really anything in there. I think the most notable thing was when one of the kids got picked up and their parents had a newer car. And by newer, it wasn't like a brand new car. It was just newer than the junk we were driving in. And but that was about as far as what you would realize outside of your immediate circle, how there was different, you thought everybody was kind of living the same situation you were in. I think today in society, because of social media and cell phones and having access to that, it kind of changes and it makes you aware of the differences that exist out in the world. Because what is most of these platforms want to show you, and where people do is like they always want to show you the best side of their life. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's just fake. People. Right. Getting up in front of a car that's not even theirs, but it's a nice car, so they want to make it seem like it's theirs. It's all this, artificial lifestyle that a lot of people are carrying, and I think that's where I think today some societies will notice that a little bit more, and there's a little bit more awareness of that. But I know growing up as a kid, we were all just as broke. I mean, every single kid that we were all. It wasn't uncommon to know that so-and-so was wearing the hand-me-down clothes from their older brother. That was just like very normal for us. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't something to be frowned upon because the clothes was still good. It just didn't fit. It didn't fit your older brother. Yeah. That was it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think that's what sets YouTube apart from the other social platforms is that, so like I actually signed up. I had never had Instagram before I had this. I signed up for it just as a way to communicate with people. But I don't get on there much. And I barely use my Facebook either. But I've always loved YouTube. I mean, I have watched more YouTube videos and more hours of YouTube in my life than I care to admit. But I feel like it's a much more social platform just because, yes, you can represent yourself in a certain way, but nobody watches an hour and a half, 2 hour long live stream and you can't hide everything. So, but because I think it's kind of the beginning of where the potential of social media is, because like you said, growing up, you're in that situation and everybody's in their little bubble before social media. But I mean, what I think the value of it is that you can see how much we all have in common, no matter how much money we have or what situation we're in. And if we could figure that out, I feel like it would be so much more valuable, just because, I mean, I've had times in my life where I have had nothing. I mean, I can remember one point in my life digging up quarters in the couch cushion and just wanting to get a pizza because my wife and I were tired and we just didn't want to cook and it was a long day and stuff was going on, and just living off of nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. I've definitely experienced that. And then I fast forward to today, that took a long time, but finally get a job and like, all right, now I can buy fish tanks. Now I have money to buy fish tanks. But you have the same stress and the same troubles. I mean, that's what amazes me is that money solves nothing. and we can still have the same stress. And if we could all just figure out that we have a lot more in common. And anyway, that's just what I love about YouTube is I feel like it offers that kind of a platform where you can be yourself. And honestly, the fake people tend to do worse. I feel like it's kind of trending towards that. I don't know if you noticed that, but people that are more authentic tend to get more viewers. Maybe that's just a trend, but
I just think as humanity we tend to gravitate to authenticity. It's just by default. Uh, that's why I. But what I like about YouTube is that you personally cater it to what you want to watch. I know the other platforms do, but the other platforms will try to throw whatever's trending and automatically assume. Like for example, when I first got my TikTok account, all I got was girls dancing to songs, and I didn't. That's not what I wanted to. That's not. And it wasn't until spending infinite amount of blocking and disliking and actually to the point now where most, I would say about 60% of it is fish related stuff that I get on there. The TikTok will still push because I think just that organically it's designed to do the 30-second dance video and
right.
I don't care for. That's not what I want to watch. But I don't have that problem as much on YouTube because YouTube now I've gone to, and I kept saying this, I know I've said this a few times, I've gone to the point where I'm searching for newer content or new content creators that almost every week it'll recommend somebody that's just starting out. But that's just because I've trained it to do that because that's what I'm looking at. I'll click on somebody's channel and I'll see, they have, 10 subscribers. Okay, let me go check them out, see what they're doing. And I'll find somebody else. And it's almost like you'll click on them and then on the suggestions below, you'll find another channel that's similar to that where I got 100 or less. And then I'll go click on that. So all of a sudden, YouTube thinks, this guy wants to see this kind of stuff. So let me recommend a little bit more. But it seems like YouTube tends to do that better than the other platforms. The other platforms, when I first got into Instagram, I had to go spend a lot of time eliminating a lot of that unwanted content.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's one of the reasons why I've almost completely stopped using Facebook stuff because I'll go through it and I'll even tell it I don't want to see this, and I scroll down, there it is again. I'm like, what? Yeah. What is it? I mean, and you can probably guess, like, you're a middle-aged man. You probably want to see this. I mean, okay, no, married man, like put that one away. But it's just that's no matter how much I try to tell it what I want to see, it shows me what they think everybody whatever my profile
because there's so many people in this age group that feeds into that and they think, automatically assume that, that's what kind of upsets me. It's kind of like, all right, I get it. I understand that there's a lot of guys that like watching that stuff, but the last thing I need is to be scrolling through my, feed or whatever. My wife walks by and goes, "What the hell are you looking at?" Is this what you're doing? I
just want to see fish. Just show me fish. That's it. Okay.
Yeah, but I found that with YouTube, it's a lot easier to do that. I don't know if everybody else experiences similar to that, but that's just from what I noticed. And I remember I almost got to the point where I wanted to quit TikTok because it's all it kept getting me in the feed. And then as you learn the platforms, you learn the only way you're going to get rid of it is you actually have to block it. And once you block it, you do it, consecutively a few times, it starts going, okay, I think he doesn't want to watch that.
Yeah. YouTube almost does it to a fault. I'll have something where I'm trying to fix my car and I look up how to change something, and then for the next 6 months it keeps trying to tell me how to change something on my car. I'm like, no, that was a one-time thing. Like, just go back to that. But yeah, it's almost like they make it for the viewer rather than they're trying to profile you rather than fit you to a profile. So yeah, I definitely
and I think with YouTube, because even though for me, my experience on YouTube when I started going to it was to try to learn how to repair something. It was a lot of that stuff. At the time, we had a washer that had broken, and I was able to find out what the problem was because you can find enough videos where it tells you if it's doing this, you troubleshoot it, and kind of turned out it was like a transaxle part that was like a plastic piece that you could replace relatively easy. And instead of calling a service guy, I found out where I could order the part, got it through Amazon, came in it down and put it on there and put it all back together. And that's really what a lot of my YouTube consumption used to be until I started doing content. But I never really thought I was going to do any of this. This Aquafunk's fault. He's the one that told me to start a channel.
Yeah, how did that happen? How'd you get into this? So what's his name? I don't know everybody's name. Sometimes I'm in your chat and I haven't quite gotten what everybody's name is. So I'm like, hi, I haven't gotten to know you yet. But anyway, so how did you start this?
When it started, the reason my name is Mexicali Fish Keeper is because I used to live in the city of Mexicali down in Mexico. And it's a border city. If you're familiar with like San Diego, Tijuana, or El Paso in Texas, it's Mexicali. Yeah. And the only thing is, this is the only one where the city in Mexico is way larger than the city in the U.S. side. It all along the rest of the border, it's the opposite. The American city is the predominant metro area, and the city across it is just a smaller city. It's not. Here in Mexicali, it's the total opposite. Mexicali is about 2 million people. Imperial Valley is maybe about 250,000. So wow. It's the only place along the whole border where it's that relationship. And so a lot of the economy in the Imperial Valley depends on the people in Mexicali. So you have a lot of people that will live in Mexicali and commute and work in the United States. So you have a lot of daily crossers. And I used to be one of those. And at the time I was living in Mexicali and I had been away from the hobby for, I don't know how many years. Basically, I kept fish in my late teens and then kept them for about 2 or 3 years, got out of the hobby, went to school, did the service, and had a family. And it wasn't until probably about 2008, 2010 that I start getting an interest again in aquariums. And I think what it was just planted tanks. When I left the hobby, that was not really a thing. Everything was colored gravel with plastic plants that would match the gravel. You had blue and black gravel with blue plants. That was my setup. And so when I all of a sudden come back and I'm start seeing these like underwater gardens, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know you could do that. So, like everything else, I wasn't immediately trying to get back into the hobby. I just kept watching videos, and that leads you down a rabbit hole. Yep. To the point where I finally get a 20-gallon tank, set it up, and it didn't take very long after setting one up. You immediately want another one. And then you start finding out, because of the advent of social media, that there's communities that you can associate with. This being one of them. This is the biggest community that I'm a part of. But you start finding out that locally there's other people that are into it. And you start hearing about fish clubs as you watch more content on YouTube. All people do fish clubs. So the idea starts on Facebook with a bunch of guys in the city of Mexicali. Is like, what do we do a fish club? Would that be something that's interested? Mexico doesn't have a big culture of doing aquatic clubs, other than in the city of Mexico City. They do have, I think, the oldest saltwater fish club in the entire country. So within the whole country of the United States, the idea of having a social club where people come together and do fish related stuff, it's still very, very new. So we start talking about it. We get up and decide to get organized, and we're starting to put stuff together. And just about when we were going to start doing our clubs, I used to follow Aquafunk, and one of his last streams, it was like whatever thing was, I kind of comment on it, hey, wish me luck, guys. I'm gonna go and try to start a fish club in Mexico. So that kind of started the conversation between the both of us, and he goes, that would be really cool if you film whatever it is you do down there. I can help you put it in a video, and because I think that's an interesting topic to do. Not too many people have shown the development of a fish club from zero. So that's how this all got started. Well, long story short, we had our first meeting, and then the shutdown of the entire world happened for about 2 years.
That was 2020.
Yeah, and so that kind of lost momentum because there was so much uncertainty, and the border. They kept threatening about closing down the border, and I was working in the United States. It became one of those things where I told my wife, I said, look, I can't afford not to be able to go to work. And if they shut it down, who knows for how long it's going to be shut down. So we need to go back stateside. And so we ended up moving. That's how we ended up here in Arizona. But still, I'm only about 55 miles away from where I originally was living. So it's not, we're cheating because we're just outside of California, but it's still close enough where it's California-ish. I can still work in the state of California, but live in Arizona. So I'm reaping the benefit of both worlds because I'm getting the cheaper cost of living with the wages of California. And so that's how this all came about. And then 3 years now since I've started doing this, this is kind of what it's become. But I really had no idea of what I was going to do or why. I thought I was doing a channel just to share the experience of doing a fish club in Mexico. That didn't come to fruition. And then I just started getting multiple tank syndrome, and to the point now where I'm kind of in the same situation where you are. I've got multiple tanks. I got set it up in the garage, and now I just kind of share my experience of keeping all these tanks, and that's pretty much it. I kind of fell into doing these interviews, not necessarily by accident, but because I love meeting new people, and this has granted me a way to make connections with other fish hobbyists. Because as much as I wanted to participate on some of the other live streams and stuff like that, nobody knew who I was, and to get invited, not everybody invites people to come onto the panels and interact. I said, well, what the hell? I'm gonna do it myself. I'll create my own culture, my own groups, and we can hang out and we can do all this stuff. And, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like it's worked out for you. So,
well, I think a lot of it is because I really do enjoy it. And I think when you enjoy stuff like that, it just kind of happens naturally.
Oh, yeah. I think that was probably my most surprising thing about YouTube was I guess you hear stories of, I uploaded one video and, I got 50,000 subscribers and 1 million views. And you hear those stories, but it's a lot of work. I mean, I didn't know how to edit when I first started, and the thumbnails and and getting in front of a camera is weird. I mean, that was the first time I did that. I was like,
hearing your own voice.
Yeah.
Hearing your own voice
because like
was
when
the
you
hardest
edit,
thing. Yeah.
Oh man, today I just filmed. I had a friend come over and to look at everything, kind of filmed like a fish room tour with a friend. And it's 1 hour and 20 minutes. So, I mean, I just spent all day listening to my voice, and it's so weird, but getting used to that is not easy, but yeah, it's a ton of work. I mean, I every time people talk about like get rich quick on YouTube, I'm like, man, you're either going to love it or you're going to absolutely hate it, and you're never going to want to do it again. So
there is no more getting rich off of this. I mean, I don't think there ever was. I think,
and even the people that get rich. So I actually, one of my kids' friends, his dad is a YouTuber and has 2 million plus subscribers. And I've talked to him in the past about like how does that work? And it's a business like any other business. I mean, yeah, they bring in a lot of money, but it's not like him sitting in just his basement making videos. He pays multiple editors. He has multiple people doing social media. It almost turns into like this enterprise. where he just makes a living wage off of it. But I ask him, like, what if one day YouTube changes their algorithm and suddenly you're not getting views and you don't have a job? So there are people that make a lot of money, but even those people, they have a team of people behind them and they're paying them all. It's like a business. So maybe, but I don't know. I mean, honestly, so I mentioned that I have other hobbies. Kind of my goal with any hobby is, can I just get it to pay a little bit for itself so that my wife doesn't get mad at me? Actually, she probably wouldn't, but that's really the only objective. And if I actually took all of this time and devoted it to something to make money, I probably make real money, but I enjoy this more. I think that's what it comes down to is it's just kind of fun to make videos, and it's kind of fun when you are filming a fish that you've been trying to get it to do that one thing that's really awesome, and then it does it, you catch it on film, and you kind of share it with people. And this thing that it took me 6 months to finally see, and now you're seeing it, hey, it's probably, people think, oh yeah, that fish probably looks that way all the time, and they don't realize, oh no, this fish doesn't fire up that often. So but it's fun to make that and to share it just so people can see what the beauty of it. So
yeah, for me, this has been an opportunity to get to know more people. That's really what it's been. Like I've always said, while I enjoy it, as long as I enjoy doing this, I'll continue to do it. But the minute this becomes more than leisure, I don't know if I would want to do it. I already have a full-time job. I can't imagine trying to have another one, because the benefit of having a full-time job is I show up at certain time, I get to leave at that time, and I'm done. That's it. Yeah. That work stays there. People that try to do this for a living, you're working 24/7. You just there's no end to it. And that's why I always find it interesting when people say, "Oh, I could do this, for a living and just do videos all the time." I go, have you really put thought into that? Because I don't think it's that easy. I think last year, was it, where a lot of big channels had to take a step back because they were burned out from, trying to, what you were talking about, because it became something where it was a hobby, something that they enjoyed doing. And then all of a sudden it became a business, like you were saying. And because it's your own business, now you're working 24/7. And you have to, the pressure start mounting, because now you're not the only one that's depending on this. You have a staff that also depends on your success. And that's the part that people don't seem to correlate. And everybody thinks, oh, I'll be able to do this by myself forever. If you really want to grow like Mr. Beast, for example, he's got an entire staff that he's got to have with him to be able to do what he does.
Not to mention, I bet that's so stressful for him. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, he can't go anywhere. I would never want to be a celebrity. I'm gonna put a cap on my channel. Not that I'd ever hit that point, but I bet it's so stressful just to, because like you said, anything he does, people want to ask him questions and that would just be exhausting. But I think I've done a lot of things where. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think for us, that would never be an issue, because we're such a niche hobby that I think our recognition would be with people within the community. And that's pretty much it, because you can go to the store, and unless they're watching fish-related stuff, they're going to have no clue who you are.
And if anybody does know who you are, you're like, oh, this is cool. You're a fish keeper. Let's talk.
Yeah. So here I doing this, I don't think that will ever be an issue. Just think about even the biggest channels that are on YouTube that do fish related stuff. Outside of fish keeping, nobody knows who they are. They go unnoticed. It's not like being a professional athlete or being a Kardashian, where everybody everybody knows who they are. That at that point, I don't think it's fun. It becomes more taxing to try to do something that we take for granted, like being able to go eat at a restaurant, or just being able to go shopping or something like that.
But even in general, it's kind of sad. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are able to make a career. I've seen fish stores come and go. I mean, even online stores, places that I bought from in the past, it seemed like they were doing fine, and they just disappear. I can't believe even just in a few years, there's places I bought fish from that just disappear, and it's kind of curious. But even breeding fish and things like that, I think it's pretty hard. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I've never gotten into the industry side of things, and obviously there's some like aquarium co-op, things like that seem to do well. But I don't know. I bet it'd be tough to make a living in it. I bet it'd be more stressful. But
and the thing is, it's like all businesses. There's a period where usually it's about 5 years where you're not going to see any revenue in your favor. If you're lucky if you're breaking even, but for the most part, it's a money pump. You're just dropping money. I mean, there's a potential. I think the biggest limiting factor in this hobby to be able to truly be successful without having a brick and mortar store is the shipping. The shipping just continues to get more and more expensive. Whereas, like, okay, well, now how am I gonna, the shipping is costing you 2 or 3 times more than what the actual value of the fish is that you're trying to sell.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you were talking earlier about those strains of guppies, and people complain about the price, but honestly, I think they're probably underpriced for the amount of work that it takes to get. And some of this stuff that's shipped in from overseas, and I can't believe they make any profit on it. Just it costs so much to maintain that. Yeah, it's amazing that people stay in business. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but you just
there are some successful people. Even in the community, we have groups.
I try not to. When I have to buy stuff.
Sorry.
Nope.
I think because it lagged a little bit. We were stepping on each other.
Oh yeah, cut out there.
Yeah, I think there is a way to make money. I just don't know if it's one of those things where you can just jump all in straight in and have success right off the bat. I think it's one of those you gotta take it in progressions, and as you start developing a customer base and you start selling, like, okay, an example, Dan's Fish. I'm sure you know who that is, right?
Oh yeah.
He's a guy that started similar to us, where he started out with some tanks. But think about how long he's been doing this to get to the point where he's at now. And then he was doing not just the fish keeping; he was running a YouTube platform where I don't know if there was a percentage of the sales that had to go to him or not, but there's multiple avenues of revenue that are associated. It's not just the selling of the fish, and but it's not.
Somebody's got to be doing well, because a lot of this stuff is really expensive. So, but is it just Fluval and Oazi and the big companies that are doing well? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and see, that's a whole other animal there, because how much I can go back, and especially, like, I guess most of us that are a little bit older and started the hobby further back before the advent of a lot of these technologies. Fish keeping was a little bit different, and you didn't have all these other extras that they try to make you buy today. Or they make you believe that they're essential to keep fish. It's kind of like, for the newer people that are coming in, they get sold into the marketing side of it, because it's a business. They want to keep you coming back and purchasing the next best thing, and the next thing. So yeah, I can see where that is, but there are some true tried methods. I know, like you were saying, it gets expensive. Well, half of my fish room is just water in a box. The other half is air driven, and that's it. I don't have any other type of filtration. But I can pull it off because I understand the basics and the principles behind keeping aquariums. I wouldn't recommend this type of fish keeping to somebody that's just starting out. Then you might need I think that's where that help comes in to play, where you have those chemicals that you can add to your aquarium that might help you go through the process and navigate it. One of the things, and I don't want to jinx myself, I don't have problem with diseases, but again, I'm not introducing new species of fish on a regular basis. Most of the stuff that I have is stuff that is bred in my fish room, and I've got more of it. And so I'm not bringing in anything new from the outside. And it's just, I don't know. I think with experience, you gain knowledge. At least in my experience, I try to push it, and I always try to see how far I can take things before I start having detrimental effects. And once I realize, oh, this is the limit, then I'll back it off. And then I'll go the opposite way and see what's the bottom limit. How far can I go? And somewhere in between that point, you're going to find your happy medium. And I think that's where, with my time of doing this, I've managed to find that medium where it's not that upper extreme and it's not that lower extreme. I can keep everything cohesive in here and happy and pretty much stress free. Because if you can reduce the amount of stress you're putting on your fish, you're going to not have issues. Things are going to be fine. So
right.
But again,
I've kind of been testing that. I think I'm kind of starting to hit that phase where I'm, thinking about things that I spent a lot on at the beginning that I'm spending less on now. Heaters. I don't know. I think that first 55 gallons has more watts than my current discus tanks. Just, I don't know. I read, you have to have this many watts, and I had this massive heater for that first 55 gallon. Now it's like, 100 watts is fine. And maybe that's not everybody would agree with that, but I feel like it's also your setup maybe changes. I mean, I noticed that since I put more tanks down here, it actually stays kind of warm down here. I have a few ways of making that less comfortable or not uncomfortable, but I spend more money on lights now. I like lights. I'm becoming a light snob. But less money on, building my own stands, things like that at the beginning. Those kinds of things I feel like I spent a lot on, but now I'm kind of going back. And even temperatures, with the heaters, like, do I really need it to be this warm all the time? I mean, it's not this warm. It rains sometimes in nature, right? There's no temperature drop. I don't know. I mean, this is something that's probably just specific to me. I'm kind of testing it, and I've read people keeping different fish in different environments, and do I really need all that? So I don't know. We'll see. I'm kind of getting to my experimental phase.
My take on that is, especially if you've been doing this for more than a year, I highly encourage people to test it, to see, okay, I know that they say you got to run at 78. Well, what happens if you run it at 76? What happens if you run it at 74? Learn that, because then it'll teach you that in the case of an emergency, like I always hear people freaking out about power outages. Yeah. And that's the last thing I'm concerned about in my fish room. I'm not, unless it's the middle of summer, I don't have no worries, because I know that my garage is going to get maybe drop down to 60s. And if the fish are going to be in that ambient temperature for a while, it's not going to be very long until the power comes back or something like that. I know that if I don't open any of my doors in the garage room, I'll be able to contain that heat in here. All these boxes, well, because I run a space heater, they get that temperature, they absorb it, and it's like having a bunch of heaters. So it just maintains the temperature. And as long as you're not letting a draft come in here, they're going to maintain for several hours. Again, like I told you, most of these I have a lot of aquariums where I'm not running any air in them, no nothing. So I'm not worried if the light goes off and not having a air pump that needs to agitate the water, because they're already running without air. So, but those are things you're not going to learn unless you start playing around with it. And I'm not saying, the reason I say you got to have some experience is because with experience, you're going to recognize when things are quickly going south, and you'll know how to remedy it before it gets too bad. But if you don't play around with it and see what your limits are or how far you can take things, you're always going to be concerned and worrying about stuff that maybe you shouldn't worry about. But so
I've noticed the same thing because of things that went wrong. So, for example, when I noticed that a heater came unplugged, and then I think, when did I mess with this power strip blast, and realize it's been a week, and this water is cold, but the fish, I haven't even noticed anything for the fish. It's like they've been fine. I'm like, do they really need this temperature all the time? And I do think long term, some fish are not going to thrive. I've had issues with fish dying and later realizing, I probably should have kept it a little bit warmer. But like rams, for instance, I think I bought some rams pretty early on, and I didn't realize they need to be kept a little warmer. So yeah, long term, yeah, maybe they can't handle that temperature. But I've noticed that maybe they're okay. I remember my first power outage that I had with that 55-gallon, wrapping the tank up in blankets and doing whatever and yeah, they needed air, but looking back, I'm like, yeah, I don't think any of that was necessary at all. And temperature can drop, and as long as it's not out for 2 weeks, it's probably going to be okay. And probably the only reason why I do have a generator for outages is mostly for the filtration. I mean, yeah, you got a good setup, it sounds like, but I've got canister filters, and if I don't run those, it'll probably maybe get in a motor spike, especially on like the discus tank. That it's bare bottom, so there's nothing in it, so all my media is in the filter. So if I have that go out for a long time, then probably kill all my bacteria and then have to recycle it.
Yeah.
Get some more media in there. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm kind of starting to notice that maybe some of this stuff isn't necessary is as necessary as everybody makes it out to be. And I keep I have a central air pump, so and it's on a battery, so it'll kick over if the power goes out. But that's all I need. And honestly, I was thinking about getting some more batteries for it, so I can run for like 2 days, 3 days straight, and then I don't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is it's understanding how long you can keep your stuff in certain conditions. And again, it's just one of those things where I don't recommend somebody that's just starting out to try to do that, because you're not going to be able to. I don't know about you, but when I walk into my fish room, immediately I'm looking and I'm seeing the behavior of the fish, because to me that's an indicator of what's going on. If I see abnormal behavior from my fish, then I know I have an issue in my fish room. But if everything looks like every other day, then chances are everything's okay.
Or the smells.
Yeah,
I've noticed that when if I lift up a lid on a tank, I go, there's some nitrites in there or something like that. I've gotten to the point where I can smell it and I check it and I go, yep, sure enough.
Yeah, and it's funny how quickly you can pinpoint your tanks, because like none of mine have lids on them. They're all open tops. And immediately I'll walk, oh, something's off. And I'll walk around, and my wife laughs at me because I'm sniffing at the top. Like, oh, this is it. And that's when I'll take a test strip, check it just to make sure, see what's going on. I know immediately I'm going to have to do a water change, but it's just kind of one of those things where you do. Let me take a quick minute to acknowledge Joy of Fish Keeping. Jose, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's not something that's necessary, but nonetheless, I want to thank you so much for that. It's just, again, these are only things that the longer you're involved with your aquariums, the more you're going to notice and you're going to want to pick up on it, and the things you're going to, it's funny what you learn. It's, people laugh at me because I go, I can kind of tell what's going on with my fish just by looking at them. But I've talked to other experienced hobbyists, and it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You just kind of feel it. Tell your wife, like, you didn't know you married a golden retriever. You just, just smell out the problems. Yeah.
Yeah. But, well, I know you got to get up early in the morning, and it's already, we've been on for an hour and a half, and I think Dan's Fish is coming on pretty soon. And I know a lot of these people like to go over there and watch them. So I'm not going to hold you much longer. The only thing I want to ask you is what other social medias are you on, in case people want to follow you, and anything you might want to add that we didn't get to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some links on my YouTube page that go to other sites. I mostly just do YouTube. I do have an Instagram and a Facebook, but mostly I set those up just in case anybody wanted to reach out, so they'd have a platform where they could send a message, which you found on Instagram. So, so it worked in that sense. So, yeah, it's mostly just YouTube. I do kind of occasionally post things on Instagram, but I might get into it a little more later. But yeah, so as far as more things, I'm just grateful to have had the chance to be on here to talk with you, and grateful to be in such a cool community. I mean, we talked a lot about community and fish keeping, and I think that's kind of why I signed up for this. So I was excited for this invitation, just because I feel like it's a continuation of that, just to get to know the fish keeping community and find other crazy people like me out there. I mean, it's just nice to know that I'm not the only one that has this this obsession, this hobby, and it's nice to share it with people. If you don't share it, then it's still nice, but it's even better if you can share it with people. So thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask you, and before we take off, are you setting up your fish room to eventually sell fish, or is it just mostly for your own entertainment?
Right now, mostly just entertainment. I have some fish that I've been breeding. I've toyed multiple times with the idea of mailing them, but I don't breed them in enough quantity that I can't sell them locally. So I just usually throw them up on Facebook locally and people come get them. So not something that I'm currently planning on turning into a business, unless I can get something cool to breed that nobody else has or something like that, and I want to send it out. So not quite yet.
All right. Well, with that being said, I want to also acknowledge Any Fish Will Do. Thank you. He said couple of people from his last live stream to come over and check out my channel. I really want to say thank you for that, and thank you for the super sticker. With that being said, I want to thank everybody that was here tonight. If you haven't subscribed to Jake's channel, make sure you guys go check it out. Give him a look. If you like what he's doing, make sure you guys subscribe and keep following him to see what he does. So with that being said, thank you guys, and we'll catch each other in the next live stream. You guys take care.
Thanks.